What's up, everybody? This is fun, and I'm here to share thoughts, have a good time, and if it's fun, we'll do it again. So maybe this is the only one. Maybe it's not. Who cares? Who knows? I'm hanging out. I'm chilling. I'm home alone. Wanted to talk to someone, so here we are. I got the Zen music on YouTube. Not sure if you can hear that, but chill out on your end. It's a safe space. Let's talk. Um, Recently went to a Jordan Peterson event in Nashville, and oh, my notes are clouding my. How do you make the notes smaller? On there we go. The notes are getting in the way of the making sure the video is working properly. Sorry. All right, we got that figured out a little bit. Oh, I'll put this on YouTube, and since I have a podcast that I never record on anymore, that channel's open, so maybe I'll drop it on the podcast channel. So if you have listened to the podcast ever in the past and you're seeing there's a new episode on the podcast and you're listening to this, then this is very different from what I've done in the past, which is have people on, have a conversation about something I'm interested in, whether the subject matter or the person. And that's awesome. But my space is not the best for that. It gets a little warm down here in the summer. Of course, there's always excuses, right? And it didn't seem like it was fitting the kind of the rhythms of our family with the kids around and everything. And sometimes they're upstairs making noise, and that's bothersome. And but the bigger thing is it just didn't fit my season of life right now. So just haven't been recording the podcast. Do miss it. Do think about it sometimes. The thing I miss the most is meeting new people and just being able to sort of have a space for conversation. That's actually something that is not super easy to duplicate quite that way any other way. That's one of the things that I noticed when I was recording episodes semi occasionally on the podcast was it was a space that you don't really get too many other ways, and it just created a nice opportunity to carve out space and time and meet new people and kind of just have a conversation for an hour or two or three unhurried. And that is what I enjoyed most about that. Anyhow, have not been recording episodes on the podcast for all those reasons, mostly just life. But hey, I have been thinking about like what were the challenges of the podcast in the past, and booking guests and getting the schedules to work and having someone run the system. Kobe was helping at that, did a fantastic job getting my schedule to work, Kobe's schedule to work, the guest schedule to work. And also, we were wanting to do basically everything in person, and we're in Nashville, so we have access to, a whole lot more than you might if you're in if you're in where, I don't know, some small town USA, right? And you want to do an in-person podcast. That could be tough if you're in a small town. But so yeah, there was just enough of challenges to it to kind of make it work with the season of life that I was in, that didn't seem to make sense to, try to keep that going on a consistent basis. But I have been thinking, we would eliminate basically two of the three schedule variables if I just turn the mic on and talk, which might be totally boring, in which case I'd welcome you to forget about these episodes. And if we have other conversations on in the future, just tune back in on those and forget about these. Because we're not in a rush. If you can't tell already, we're not in a rush. So this may go a while. And it's probably not going to be just, quick, punchy, productive tips and tricks. So anyhow, what I was thinking is I would eliminate variables if I just turn the camera on, which I have, turn the mic on, which I have, sit at this table, which I have, we mostly use the podcast studio for, well, we use it. It's my man cave. Okay. So it's my space. So I just left all the stuff set up, even though I'm not using it. But it's my space. Boys come over most UFC fights now. Most of them, if it works. I got 2 guys, consistent, love the UFC, interested, are there for the actual fights. It's freaking fantastic. Anyhow, the space is great for stuff like that. And it's really the only TV we have in the house. So this is where the TV shows are watched and the movies or whatnot. Sunglasses, because if Tim Dillon can do it, we can too. And it seems fun, and it just puts a nice little space between me and you. So that's what's up with the glasses. Okay, so but yeah, so I was thinking, hey, this might be easy. So here we are. I've been thinking about it for a little while. Like, how structured do we want to do it? Do we want to have like certain topic groups that we hit every time? Do we want to record once a week? Do we want to just turn the mic on when we want to? What if you do it daily? Should I even be doing this with everything else I have going on right now? Is this a waste of time? Is this a distraction? Okay, I overthink a lot of things. So I was overthinking this too, and I thought, shoot, well, what we can do, I am home alone. The house is quiet. Everything is right here. Why not? Why not turn the mic on and just do it? And if you wanted to ever do it again, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. So big whoop to do. Stop overthinking it. So that's what's happening. Jordan Peterson. Okay, when was that? This is mid-June. I'm going to say that was mid-April, probably. Jordan Peterson was in Nashville. First found out about Jordan Peterson, I think I started hearing about him, I think maybe in 2015, 2016. And I think it was around the end of 2016 when I read his book, 12 Rules for Life. And that was really my introduction to Jordan Peterson. I'd heard his name floating around, had no idea who he was, what he was about. You know, I thought he was sort of in the world of like philosophy and kind of, I knew academia to some degree. Didn't know much about him at all. Wasn't really hearing about him culturally at the time. I guess what I was hearing about him the most at the very beginning was that he was resonating with young men. That was probably one of the first things that I had that kind of stuck with Jordan Peterson, resonating with young men. And I knew he'd written some books that were kind of intense, and also didn't take long to notice that the people that were into Jordan Peterson were really paying attention to what he was saying. And they were like following along, It wasn't like a kind of fly by night seasonal type of thing, because that happens super much and it's great. But I just did notice that in addition to knowing that he was and hearing he was resonating with young men, noticing that the guys at the time in particular, that the people that were getting into him seemed to really continue over time to pay attention to what he was saying. And that was interesting because, if there is something I think about the chafe kind of falling away, like if you are more hype than truth, that doesn't tend to stick, over a long period of time. And I'm not necessarily saying like that everything Jordan Peterson says is true. I mean, I have no idea. He says a lot of things, and but there must be, in my thinking, there must be like enough substance here for people to be sticking around over a period of time. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. Because if not, you do tend to come and go. That's sort of the filtering effect of reality over time. Time tends to filter out a lot. It is interesting. there's almost like a brutality to time. There's almost like an intolerance to reality. Like like you can bump up against it, but it's not going to be the thing that moves. You know, you can get crazy for some period of time, but it enough of time goes by and it tends to sort of weed the crazy out, and the true and good, tends to last. Anyhow, read his book 12 Rules for Life, and fantastic. Fantastic. I think there's no way I read it twice, because I don't think I've ever read any book twice. I think I read it, and when I read a book, it's very slow. There's sentences I'm reading over, there's paragraphs I'm rereading, and there's a pen and I'm marking things up and stuff. So I'm not in a rush when I'm reading a book. And I remember, having to sort of even slow down a little bit more for him. Now, he almost lost me on was it the first chapter too? It was like going on and on about lobsters, and I didn't know what he was about. Okay, so I just picked up his book, start reading it. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how he thinks and how he reasons. And the one thing Jordan Peterson does a lot is, like, he goes the long way around. He goes a long way around, and it's worth it. And you're glad he did, but you have to stick with him as he goes around the bend, because he is really adding layers to the point that he's driving at as he speaks or as he writes. And he's very careful with his wording in those layers, which I think is something that is resonating with people today. And it's interesting, because if that's true, that just reinforces my point number two, which is that the way this world is set up, bullshit tends to fade away. So I wonder if someone doesn't speak carefully, there's just a certain amount of bullshit in what they say, and there's going to be mostly bullshit in what I'm saying here. So that is what it is, and that's what you're getting. But in terms of, like, someone speaking from a position of authority, like a pastor or a speaker, of some kind, like a teacher, um, where when you're speaking from a position of authority, well, it could even be your boss at work. It could be, you know, it could be a news anchor. I mean, it could be, but anyone who's trying to kind of, like, lead you from point A to point B in communication, or kind of convince you of a point, or sell you something, or have influence, like someone with influence. I think the two best are, like a pastor, because they're preaching every Sunday. And if that's a great example. If they start, like, straying super far from the path and just adding in too much bull, you're gonna lose interest. And so the the um the thing I wonder about is, Jordan, this is to his credit, he's very careful with his words, and he doesn't add in. It really seems like, he takes a lot of care to not add in things that he doesn't believe, and not add in things that are unnecessary. I noticed this most with his event in Nashville in April, whenever that was. There was and this was like so noticeable about halfway through it. It's really impressive. Like, even if you don't like some of what he's saying or whatever, or even if you think he's a cultural flashpoint and should be avoided just because of the fact he's a cultural flashpoint, and you don't want to be associated with the bright lights, then, or the side picking, or the stereotyping, or the grouping of people, or the dismissing, or the, God forbid you get kind of tagged as being part of a camp that your camp doesn't like. and that reflects poorly on you, God forbid, you know. So I feel like some people stay away from him because of that, which everyone can make their own decisions. But my point is, even if you're not a fan of his, I think I think if you went to one of his events and heard him speak and you paid any attention to public communication at all or appreciated it sort of at all, you would have to be impressed by how few words are wasted. It is ridiculous. And he wasn't reading off of a teleprompter. Couldn't have been. He was walking the stage. I would think he had notes. I would think there's probably a teleprompter in the room. It might even be on with bullet points. I mean, I have no idea. But he's pacing, looking up, down. He's engaged in his thoughts. That's what you would notice. Uh, that that that's one thing that you couldn't not notice if you're paying attention. Like, he's clearly, when he's speaking, he's engaged in his thoughts, deep in his thoughts. And to be able to talk for like that amount of time, because it was some amount of time, I forget how long it was. I was also curious how they were going to open that event. Like, is there going to be an opener that comes up, or does it just cut straight to Jordan? I think there was a video, and I think Jordan came out, and then is it Constantine Klein came out after and interviewed him a little bit. But so, you know, he might have talked for, my wife would remember this for sure, 2 hours, hour and a half. It, you know, it was long. And to have that few amount of wasted words in that amount of speaking time, it really was impressive. I think that speaks to his intellect and sharpness, and maybe the amount of care he takes in, or his investment in the topics that he's talking about. I think it's a combination. And then probably the third thing is just his experience. I mean, he is super experienced and has taught, spoke for a long, long time. So I think all those three things together probably. But I just don't think you, I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk for that amount of time and say so much and have so few wasted words. I don't think the guy said one single time in 2 hours. You know, so from a standpoint of delivering a message, fantastic. So yeah, I'd read his book, and then some of my closest friends have been following what Peterson is saying and really resonating and been talking about it. So I got, you know, I started paying more and more attention to what he said. I read his last book. I forget what it was called. Is it 12 More Rules for Life or 24 Rules for Life? I forget what his last book is called, but I think it's his most recent one. And it was good, but you know, for me, it wasn't, I don't think is like formative maybe as 12 Rules for Life, just because I was so new to his content at the time. And yeah, had heard a lot less about his kind of core beliefs, like what he's saying, because you know, they mostly stick, you know. So like when I read his latest book, you can see it building on what he's already saying, you know. And so it was just, yeah, less new information. Fantastic book. I remember less about it, honestly, at this point, or right now in this moment, than 12 rules 12 12 rules for life. But I think those are the only two books I've read. You know, I've dipped in and out of his podcast a little, but I haven't listened much, honestly. If a podcast doesn't have video on Spotify, then I'm probably not watching it, because that's how I watch all my podcasts is download the episode and then listen to it while I'm on the road, but have the video going. And I'm not watching the video, of course. I'm driving. But, you know, glancing down every now and then, seeing something going on, someone's kind of demeanor, eye contact, the vibe in the room, the expression, that's not the right term, the demeanor of the host, the guest, their body language. I feel like that for me is like about 50% of the whole experience. Like, it's one thing just to hear like two people's words back and forth, but you can learn a lot about kind of seeing it take place in real time also. I think it gives you better context. A point that they're making might hit a little bit different if you see them making the point. It's just more entertaining. So anyhow, I'm thinking Peterson does not have video on his Spotify podcast, but that's not really the main reason. Obviously, of course, that I am not following along his podcast. The thing is, I just have like my kind of podcast now. I listen to All In podcast once a week. Listen to a good number of Joe Rogan's episodes. Lex Friedman occasionally. Every now and then, Tim Ferriss. Not so much recently. I hadn't listened to Tim's podcast for a couple of years, and then just in the last year or two, I'll check back in every so often, see what he's got going on. He doesn't have video on Spotify either, unfortunately. And that's kind of it. If there's something Huberman's saying that I want to hear, but that's mostly like, I want to hear his thoughts on cannabis. I want to hear his thoughts on alcohol. I want to hear his thoughts on smoking cigarettes. Smoke cigarettes for a year. We'll have to talk about that too. Quit that in November. Freaking fantastic. Those little devils are fantastic. Smoked American spirits and organic, right? How bad can it be? And a cigarette every now and then, like, can it really be that bad? Once a week, a few times a month. And so, yeah. So I tried them. I think I tried them. Let's see. What was it? I said I smoked it for a year, but now I'm curious. Maybe it was March. Shoot. Was it March of 2023 to November of 2023? Or was it a year and a half? Good grief. So fried my memory is. I was could no, I don't think it was a year and a half. Good grief. Anyhow, I got hooked. They're wonderful. They're fantastic. They Everything about it was, it's one of the best highs you ever have. Super short. It's only like 5 or 10 minutes, so the peak of the the punch is short. Doesn't last long. But man, I don't like to think about it too much because I kind of miss them. Summer evening, it's warm, kids are playing, everyone's happy, wife's happy. Just a nice smoke. Or it's late on a Saturday night, also summer, also warm, garage doors open, UFC's in, you're 3 hours into a UFC fight, smoke a cigarette. It was the only thing that I ever felt like it could get me. Like it could pull me in. It could trap me. It could make me a slave to it, an addict. Alcohol never once felt like that. Other things I've smoked, aside from cigarettes, never once felt like that. What else? I guess that's really it. But as you can tell, I haven't tried a lot. But cigarettes, I did feel it kind of felt like a little bit of a pull from the dark side, to be honest. And it's I don't think it's like that for everyone. Like I don't think you've got the dark side if you smoke cigarettes. I don't think you're dipping into the dark side when you smoke cigarettes. So it's not that. Um, but for me, I think I felt the proclivity or the opportunity to get sucked into it too much and for it to have a detrimental effect on my body. That's what I felt. So yeah, because then I got to smoking them more and more, and if you're gonna do something, you may as well do it all the way, right? So the truth of the matter is I started to smoke those little things way too much, and then in November, or was it December? Sorry, it was December. It was mid-December of 2023. I had a new friend stop in at my house with my other friend who connected us, and 34 years old, two kids, been married for about a couple years less than my wife and I. So I think he's been married 16, 17, 18 years. And he had the same type of cancer that my dad had. And my dad died at 36 when I was 10, Hodgkin's lymphoma. And this guy, 34, that cancer seems to hit like that age. It seems like mid-20s to mid to upper 30s is when that's the most popular time. It's interesting to see like the different types of cancer and the different ages they tend to affect people. But yeah, so here's this new friend who's awesome. Got a family, 34 years old, has Hodgkin's lymphoma, had it a year ago, did treatment, beat it. It came back. They're trying this new treatment, and you know, he is he was going into the hospital that night. And so this was like 2 or 3 o'clock. It just um like he was in town kind of suddenly. I mean, I didn't know that this was going down then. And then my buddy who connected us was like, hey, and this guy's got a couple hours to kill before. Oh, was it something weird like the room wasn't ready? I think basically they just got there like a little before check-in time or something. Or maybe they should have, the room wasn't ready. I forget, but I feel like they'd went to the hospital and then had a few hours to kill. And so my buddy who lives here is like, hey, he's got a couple hours to kill. And I was like, man, come on. So came over. I feel like he had the hospital wristbands on already. And he's about to go through the valley of death. The treatments that he was signed up to get were super intense. And something needs to be done because you let this alone and it'll take you out. So this needs to be fixed. This cancer needs to be cured, And yeah, it was just something about, I guess, seeing him ready to go to the hospital with the wristbands on, my ability to place myself in his world just a little bit because of what I've experienced, having my father, die from this exact same cancer, and, seeing what that looks like, from the inside, it's really brutal. It's really brutal. I mean, you have like the fears, the kids have fears, the wife has fears, the husband has fears. there's thoughts you have, you don't necessarily share them all. There's questions, there's uncertainties, there's hope, there's love, there's disappointment. It's man, it's a heck of a thing for a family to go through, especially a young family. And he had 2 kids, I think, maybe a low teenager and a like a young 6, 7, 8 boy. But anyhow, yeah, so it was really great super glad I got to meet him, and really honestly kind of honored for that experience, for him to be, just to see someone the hour before they go in for treatment like that is, you know, and just what they do with the treatment and the radiation and the chemo, and I think he got some sort of a transplant. So like they cook, total microwave, nuke your body, and some people die. That's the truth of it. Some people die going through that. He made it through. He's doing super well. Cancer's gone. Things are great. He's still getting chemo every now and then, but this is, here we are midway through 2024. This was 6 months ago. And, thankfully he could go here to Vandy. Nashville has some of the best hospitals. And so he was getting treatment at Vanderbilt, which is great because, that's going to be some of the best. And, I think it basically all went pretty much as good as it could possibly go. I mean, he's young, fit, strong, healthy, committed. He's eating right. He's got a support system around him. His wife is awesome. His kids are awesome. He's doing, I think, as good as he could possibly do. Anyhow, those 2 guys left my house on this afternoon, late afternoon in December of 2023, mid-December. And I got 1 cigarette or 2, I forget which. And I just walked, out in the backyard by the sauna. And I don't think anyone else was home. And it was kind of a nice day. It was sunny. And I just freaking cried my eyes out and smoked a cigarette. And, that was the last cigarette I smoked. Because, if this guy can take himself to the hospital, go to Vanderbilt, to the cancer ward, mid-December, and know you're going to miss Christmas. Can't have any visitors. You'll probably come back out, but you might not. Your kids can't be with you. Your wife's there. If he can face into that, then I can fucking stop smoking cigarettes, because I was smoking too many. So that was my experience with cigarettes. Back to the Peterson event. Honestly, I forget a lot about what he was talking about that night. To be totally honest with you, it was on a Friday night, and Friday night is protected ground for our family because it's sacred ground for my wife and I, and we almost never give it up. We look forward to Friday nights like you can't even imagine. It's just going to be the 2 of us. We're going to do whatever we want. The kids are going to go nuts on video games. It's the one night of the week. Here's your Switches. Here's your iPads. Here's your controllers. Here's the remote for the TV. Watch a movie, watch YouTube, play video games. Just don't bother us. That's the one rule on a Friday night. Don't bother mom and dad. Let us alone. So it's been our Friday nights have been freaking awesome. And we what we noticed about them was it was a total free gain. So like we didn't used to do Friday nights. We didn't do Friday nights like this until I think 2020. Pretty sure. I think it kind of came to us in 2020 sometime. We didn't know what to do with video games. Do you let them play a little bit every day? Do you let them play every couple of days? They wanted to play Fortnite. Their friends were doing it. They're on their phone. They're with their friends. They're talking to their friends, and it's like a social thing, and they'd love to do it. And, oh, shoot, how do we handle video games? I've never really played video games. How do we handle this? We got them Switches, got them Fortnite, and so they started to play, and we would monitor it because we're super sensitive with screens because my wife grew up Amish and I grew up Mennonites, and we didn't grow up with TVs, radios, none of that stuff. And which has been, we see the benefits of that. And I don't mind having it. I have a TV right here, although I don't have a TV subscription. Who would do that anymore? But yeah, so at some point we figured out, what if we just sort of like go nuts on Friday nights and that's it? So that's pretty much kind of what we've done. They do get screens stuff. I mean, it varies by age, right? We have someone who's almost 14 years old, so he has an iPad for school and he's going to have that around, and that's fine. But we do try to limit the screens and but go nuts on Friday night. That allows mom and I to spend time together, go to dinner, stay in the bedroom, sit in the backyard, go on a hike, go to something like the Peterson event if we want to. But pretty much you're never meeting up with anyone on a Friday night. So I guess you call it date night. I don't know. That's a weird. That never felt right for me to say, date night. It always felt a little weird. I don't know why. I don't like it. Mom and I are getting time together, and it's uninterrupted. That's the point of Friday nights. So this was on a Friday night. So, it's party night for us. But hey, we'll go to the Peterson event. And so I don't remember much about what he said. I do know it was long. I do know it was super substantial. Just a lot of depth to it, a lot of building the foundation, building the layers. You don't have to agree with me if you don't want to, but here's why I am about saying the point that I am saying. Here's why it's important. Here's the different ramifications. Here's some of the other ways of thinking and the end results of some of those. So it's all that in just one. But the thing that I noticed most about the Jordan Peterson event was the people who were there. It was at the Bridgestone Arena in downtown Nashville, and full, pretty much sold out from what I could tell. The Bridgestone Arena, which is where the Nashville Predators play hockey, concerts are going to go down there, that type of thing. Every now and then, some friggin' monster truck show rolls in or whatever. And so it was at the Bridgestone Arena, and we had just been to, oddly enough, like 2 weeks apart or 2 weeks before, we'd been to an Andrew Schultz show at the Opry House. Opry, what is it called? The Grand Ole Opry. And so I guess I'll say a little bit more about that, but having had that experience and just knowing what it normally feels like to walk into the Bridgestone Arena and just what it feels like to be in Nashville and what it feels like to be in the general public and the way it feels at concerts and other, public events, what all that feels like. You walk into Bridgestone Arena and it immediately, my wife and immediately you walk in, it's like, this is different. This feels different. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. Quiet. Not, people arriving at the event or some there. I mean, we were a little bit on the earlier side, I think, because of, I think, finished dinner and then dinner, we probably could have waited another 30 minutes to have dinner, but we had dinner, I think. And then what do you do then, So we just like, well, let's just go and get there. So I think we were a little early. Maybe it wasn't 30 minutes, but 20 minutes. And, when I go to the Bridgestone Arena, I think have been to so many hockey games there. You go in, you're just used to like the lobby, the walkways, everything just being flooded with people. And, there's music going, people are talking, it's loud, right? It's chaos in there. I mean, you walk into the Jordan Peterson event and it's all quiet. It's just quiet. There's like a hush in the whole space, it's like a hush. And the people were very, very interesting, very much like not the slice that you would have gotten from Nashville. And I'm not even talking about Broadway. Just if you could slice out 10,000 people out of this neighborhood, that neighborhood, just around Nashville, the people who were at the Schultz event, etc., like that's what you're used to. This was a very different sort of slice of people. And it was interesting to kind of see the different like types of people there, and we didn't go around meeting everyone. So look, a lot of this is just, what do we know? you know, you're just judging the book by its cover. You're just, so it's not like you're right all the time. Okay. And it's not like you're judging. Who cares, but it was interesting to observe the different types of people there. You definitely had kind of the homeschool type, which is interesting the thing to say, because that is, I guess what I'm talking about is almost like the stereotypical homeschool type, which is not all of them. And I don't even know if it's many of them anymore. Homeschooling, it's crazy down here in Tennessee. There's so many people homeschool down here. I grew up in upstate New York and very few people homeschooled. Very few people. I think maybe more might now, but it wasn't that common in upstate New York, and super common in Tennessee. Very, very common. And they're getting together once, twice, 3 times a week. I mean, it's sort of like, another way to think about it is sort of like shared schooling, So I don't know if the homeschool term is even really the best term for that anymore. But in terms of like, in terms of like the stereotypical sort of homeschool type, don't roast me for having to say this out loud. I'm just, whatever you're thinking, let's go with that. That's what I'm talking about. Like that there was some of them there, which is interesting. Then you had like a young couple, a very professional young couple, like dressed super nice. They are clearly, they're fashionable. They're, young, probably successful, professional couple that look like they're flourishing, in life. And you had them there. Then you had a lot of older men than me, like, maybe I'm middle. I don't know if I'm middle aged. What are you when you're 40? I have no, I don't think I'm middle aged yet, but like you had a lot of men there in their 50s and 60s, a lot. Some of them would have their wives with them. A lot didn't, which was interesting. I thought maybe sad a little bit. I don't know. It would be interesting to go back to another event and see a lot of women there for sure, and a lot of wives there too, and some girlfriends there. But that demographic, I think, if I remember correctly, kind of in particular, at 50 and 60-year-old men, they a lot of them too in that subgroup looked like they looked um someone's messing with the TV. Sorry. They look like they might be a little bit like academic or like be thinkers. They look like thinkers. A lot of them did. And then you had that group there. Then you had the cops. Not like not not like they were dressed as cops, just like a couple of my friends that are cops. They look like them. So you look like you had some like the off-duty cop look there. What else? Yeah, and then you had like almost teen like young men, like they might be in college. They some of them looked a lot of them looked like they might not live in the city, like they might have drove in from an hour away, from 2 hours away, from 3 hours away. I don't know. Like they look like they might have, be a little bit more kind of maybe a little bit more in a country setting where they got jobs at a young age, they were responsible at a young age, hard workers, they clean themselves up, but you can tell like the way they dress, they didn't like, you know probably don't live in downtown Nashville or in the Gulch, so then they were there, and it was very very interesting, just the quietness of the crowd, and kind of people paying more attention to you as you walk through kind of the lobby area than you're used to. In normal events, you just are just invisible. No one's paying attention to you. That group seemed like they noticed you more when you walk by in general. And so we were trying to figure this out because we didn't necessarily like know what to do with it, so we weren't really talking about it for the first while, just kind of observing, and I just couldn't figure it out in my mind, like how a lot of places you just sort of like know the vibe, what's going on, you kind of you get it. And I didn't get it. I wasn't getting it. I didn't I didn't I wasn't able to like put my finger on it or place it, And about halfway through, or maybe more towards the beginning when it was starting, or was it at the end of our wait time there when this occurred to me? I think it was into the show a little bit though. But it just occurred to me, okay, what as I was thinking it through in my mind, I was thinking like, well, what's the main thing that I see among everyone? What does everyone who's here seem to have in common as I survey the crowd? Like, what do I think? What's my opinion on what I'm seeing here, what I'm picking up? What's the common denominator or common denominators for the most part among everyone? And because it was so predominantly men, which I want to say, but yeah, just you know, I do think it's a little bit sad there wasn't more wives with the guys. Now, some of them might have been driving from out of town, so I get that. But, if probably most of the people that were at that event were, probably most of them were pretty committed. Like they're probably following along. They're probably paying a lot of attention to what he's saying. And, if your husband's that into something, would it kill you to go along, see what this is about? I don't know. But yeah, so then it just clicked. And it just clicked immediately. Like it seemed to me, and look, clicked. It just clicked in my mind. Like it seemed like when I had this thought, when I look at this group in this event that night, here's what it looks like to me. Predominantly male. They just look like good providers. Yeah, just they look like they were good providers. And that's a pretty key thing for the male role. That's kind of the primary thing, you might say. uh I mean, there's a few that are, it's kind of hard to rank here, but that's not the point. But every man with a family or a girlfriend or a wife or anyone that he's responsible for, you know, he needs to go down swinging in an effort to provide. That is a essential role. It's really, really important. And it looked to me like the guys that were there were good providers. And it kind of looked to me also like, this may sound weird. You have a right to your own opinion. I'm just saying what I thought. They look like good providers. They look like good protectors. And this was like across the different like types of people who were there. Like I'm talking people who look nothing like each other, who do not look like they might go to the same church, who do not look like they would have live in the same town, just like people who, because you definitely had the professional crowd there too, you definitely had like the urban crowd there too. Like you definitely had some of the people that you would see at the Andrew Schultz event. They were definitely there also, but across kind of the whole, all of them, good providers, good protectors, and good lovers. That's just what it looked like. They look like this crowd looked like they were good providers, good protectors, and good lovers. And like they cared about their girlfriend or their wife. That's just what good lovers, like what all is wrapped up in that. There's a lot that's wrapped up in that. But anyhow, that you know cheers to Jordan Peterson. I mean, the thoughts he was able to express in the time that he had, the way he did it, and distill it down and build up his points and show you why this matters, and to see the passion and to see the honesty and to see the dedication firsthand. Just I give Jordan Peterson a lot of credit, I mean, it was noticeable. And then this crowd, I just felt like that crowd deserves credit, because they seem like that. And I'm sure there was lots of exceptions, but that's just what it seemed like. Schultz event was so good. Oh my goodness. Schultzy. Andrew Schultz. This guy is freaking sharp. He is so sharp. I don't know if you saw Schultz Saves America. I think that's what it called on Netflix. I think it came out in 2020. You might want to check it out if you haven't. It's great, but his comedy is great, and he's just a good writer. He's a good presenter. He's a good communicator. High energy, very quick witted, very experienced. I mean, he is one of the best comedians. I mean, he is so sharp. And so he had a show at the Nashville Comedy Fest at Opryland, and that venue is just so great. We'd seen Nate Bargatze there a couple years ago also, but it's like, if you've been there, like the seats come up and around and the stage is down here and there's really not a bad seat in the house and the sound's great and it's way bigger than the Ryman. So you really get like the big crowd feel, but it's not like a stadium. It's more intimate. It's all direction. You can see people around you because the seating's all kind of in a U shape, up, down, everything's, in there pretty steep coming down to the stage. That place is, so much history there, and the sound is so great and the stage is great and the seating's awesome. And so many beautiful people, like remarkable. Okay, so you park. It was the most perfect summer night you could possibly imagine. Actually, it wasn't summer night, but it felt like a summer night. It was April, but it was just like a warm breeze. The time must have changed maybe already, which is bullshit, but it was still plenty bright, when we were there, and people were in a good mood. There's people milling around and getting there early, and everyone's excited, and so many beautiful people. Dude, weird. Like noticeable just getting into the venue. like noticeable walking through the parking lot and across the courtyard and everything, the crowd of people that was there. And then when you see people on the inside, you just are like, babe, look around. Have you ever been to a live event with more beautiful people than this? And I don't know that we have. I do not know what it is with Schultz in Nashville, Tennessee, that attracted so many beautiful people, right? I mean, everyone's beautiful in their own way. You know what I'm saying? Like, just beautiful people. And so that was like hard not to notice. It was kind of cool, you know, good for Schultz. But his show, freaking amazing, just amazing. You know, his openers, three of them. Derek Post is awesome. Derek was recently on Joe Rogan's podcast, which he was super pumped about. I think it was his first time on there, and of course that podcast is ginormous. But Derek is it posting just so good. We'd seen him live at the Comedy Mothership, I think, last fall also, and he was awesome then. And then another guy that I could picture, but I can't remember his name. And doggone it, I kind of forget who the other one was. They were all three good though, but the production value of the show, the music beforehand when you're waiting, hip hop, rap, just the right music mixed in. And then his video entry when Schultz comes out, I mean, just freaking fantastic. I mean, impressive show. Impressive. Like, again, the production value on that thing, sick. So great job, Schultz. It was awesome. He totally nailed it. Went to my first UFC event this past weekend in Louisville, Kentucky. I fell into the UFC a couple years ago, and honestly, I pushed it off for a long time. Didn't want to get into it, and I kind of tend to go from sport to sport. So hey, maybe I'll move on from this one too at some point. But I just like the rhythms of the UFC. You know, it never felt right watching football on Saturday. I mean, for frick's sake, Saturday is still a work day, right? So that just felt weird to me. You know, watching football on a Saturday and then watching football on a Sunday afternoon. It's cool, you know, if the kids are into it, if you got boys that want to watch it with you. But I was watching games by myself, and you know, if you kind of get into something, you want to get into it, right? So if you're going to follow along with your team, you want to watch them play like every Sunday. And so then I don't know, it started to feel a little weird. It felt like it was just me that was into it, and you know, I'm watching football when the family's out doing something, whatever, in the backyard, you know, whatever. Just didn't feel right. But who knows? Maybe I'll get back into it. I'll say a good NFL game is, and I know lots of people say this about college too, which I agree with college too, but man, a good Sunday NFL game that's one of the best things you can see on TV. I mean, it's so awesome. What a great sport, football. But anyhow, I like the rhythms of the UFC. Saturday night, 5 to midnight, and the pay-per-view fights only one or two a month, so it's not like you got to watch fights every Saturday night. Once or twice a month, you got to pay $80 for it, which sucks, but whatever, it's totally worth it. Get some guys coming over. It's awesome. So I pretty much watch all the pay-per-views now. And then on the fight nights, which are on the off nights, which are free, you can watch them for free on ESPN Plus. The fight nights, let's get a new Zin in here. I've been liking Zin. Citrus, baby. Although I'll say these winter greens are pretty awesome too. Actually, citrus was my favorite flavor of Zin until they were out for so long over Memorial Day that I got some winter greens, and I kind of like the winter greens maybe even better. I like them a lot. Anyhow, UFC. So yeah, the fight nights are on the off nights of the pay-per-views, and you can watch for free on ESPN. So I watch some of those. It's not like the biggest fights. Like, you know, the biggest fights are saved for the pay-per-view events. But yeah, the UFC fight night in Louisville, the tickets are like $75 a pop. We sat kind of at the side of the ring, you know, pretty close to the top. So not the best seats at all. But I wanted to just go because I wasn't sure like what a fight night would be like. Is this like worth spending bigger money to be at a better seat? Or I mean, I've never been to a UFC event, so like, what's the event like even like? Is this one of those things where it's better actually just to watch on TV than live? Almost like football can be a lot of times. I feel like football is honestly, unless you have fantastic seats, it's just better to watch it on TV than it is to be at the game. So is this going to be like that? So got an Airbnb on Saturday night, got up there Saturday afternoon, just my wife and I, freaking fantastic. Could not wait for this weekend. The sitters here with the kids, everyone's good. We're out, haven't been away for a night, just the two of us in a while. So this is going to be awesome. First UFC event. I was just picturing in my mind, it's Saturday. We're driving up to Louisville. It's 2.5, 3 hours. It's midday Saturday. We're feeling good. The fight's that night. First check in at the Airbnb. You know what I mean? Like, super stoked about this. Look, when you're freaking 40 with 5 kids in this season of life, this is like heaven. You look forward to this shit for weeks and months, just knowing you're going to be able to get out with mama, just the two of you. And so she was totally cool. She doesn't watch the fights with me. She doesn't have a problem with it, just not her thing. But she was totally cool to go along, and she loved it. Yeah, it was quiet. Did not expect that. Great event. Great event. Um, you're watching the screen a lot though, particularly with the bad seats. I cannot imagine being at a pay-per-view event, any pay-per-view event, or particularly on a big fight, and being down close to that octagon must be freaking insane. It must be awesome. It must be awesome to be on the floor or semi close to ringside on a big fight. Must be bonkers. I mean, it must be like it. I don't know what boxing matches are like, but I don't know where else you would get an experience like that. I mean, that must be incredible. So yeah, the when you're watching it on the TV, the announcers are talking, and the announcers do such a good job, particularly John Anik, Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier on the pay per view events when they commentate on those events. They do a really good job on honoring the fight. They're not in your ear the whole time. They're not talking the whole time. They're not distracting you. They're not being silly in a way that's distracting. They're not making fools of themselves. They're not putting themselves between you and the fight at all. They do a really, really good job on that. And the announcer or the commentators for the fight nights, they do too. But Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier, John Anik, pay-per-view event is Saturday night. Let's fucking go. I mean, that's so awesome. So I love it on TV. And so when you watch it on TV, you're hearing the commentating. But when you're there, Bruce Buffer doesn't go to the fight nights, but whoever the Bruce Buffer replacement is comes out, announces the fight, the fighters, height, weight, where they come from, where they're fighting from, and then TV people clear out, the teams clear out, ref comes out in the middle, you ready, everyone's out. The gate, there's 2 gates. I guess never picked that up on TV. I just thought there was one, but there's 2 gates. They come in one and go out the other, and both gates are locked. You ready? Yep. Fight goes on, and it's just quiet. And the lights go down in the arena, and they have just the stage lit up. And I should have known this because you can see this when you watch it on TV. You can see like it's darker. I guess I never thought of it. I didn't know if that was like sort of what they're doing for TV. I don't know. I never thought of it. I never like consciously noticed, I guess. It's just, when you're watching a UFC fight, you see the crowd is like a little, it's not brightly lit, but it never occurred to me as like, oh, that's different than normal. But yeah, they lower the lights in the arena, and then the octagon is lit real bright, and so even from like way up in the nosebleeds, seeing down into the thing. I mean, look, those seats are not great. You need to be way closer because up there you're really just watching on the TV. But you can actually see them fairly well because of how they have everything designed. But the walkouts are so cool to see in person. So cool to see in person. One of the things I noticed different between TV and being there, I noticed how much of the story is how much more of the full story you see. You see the humanity of it way more than when you're watching on TV. You see how the fighter coming in has this life and backstory to get where he is, and you see when he's walking out of the cage and going back in that he's going to carry that same backstory, all those same experiences and everything that he carried into that cage, and then he's going to have those experiences in that cage and carry that with him yet too. And you don't really see that on TV, because on TV, like, you see the walk in and everything, and the TV's in their cameras in their face, and it's awesome. And you see them getting their shirt off and their shoes off and everything, getting ready, just getting down to their fighting gear, mouthpiece in. You see that, you see them go into the cage and everything, and you see the fight, and then you see the interview maybe after the fight, but you might see the other person kind of walking away. Sometimes you see him kind of go out the cage door a little bit if you get the shot right or whatever. Most of the time, you don't really see him after the fight that much, and you definitely don't see him like walking out all the way along the floor leaving. But when you're there in person, you see him come in, you see the fight happen, you see both of them walking out after the cage, and there was 3 fights there that ended in the first round. And so Dustin Stoltzfus fought our favorite Amish fighter who I had on the podcast an episode ago. So that was a coincidence, so that was cool. I had Dustin on the podcast, noticed him fight in Austin. He won that fight in Austin last fall. It was a UFC fight night in Austin. But see, some of the UFC fight nights are just basically for TV, and there's not much of a live audience at all. And then others of them, they go to cities, Nashville, Louisville, Tampa, all around to have these fight nights. So when there's a live crowd at the fight night, I like to watch that on TV also. But the fight nights where there's not a live crowd, just a small crowd, just at their headquarters in Vegas, that's mostly for TV. I don't usually watch those. I might, excuse me, if there's a fight I want to see, or I'll watch the fight itself, but or the replay, but usually not the whole thing, because it's nice to have a Saturday night off every now and then. But yeah, so Dustin fought in UFC Fight Night in Austin last year, and I was like, Dustin Stoltzfus, and then someone DM me on Instagram is like, oh no, he's from Lancaster and is from the Amish and blah blah blah, and that was super intriguing to me. So I had him on the podcast. So he fought this past Saturday night in Louisville, and that was one of the 3 or 4 fights that ended in the first round. And he took 2 spinning back elbows to the freaking face, and had got 2 fractures in his face, got nerve damage in his face. I think this is Thursday, and I think as of now, the left side of his face is still numb. I mean, oh man, it's, but look, it sucks to see it when you see someone get hit like that or get knocked out like that, that you don't, have any sort of connection with. It's different. But, when you see someone who you talked with and, know of a little bit, and, to see them get punched hard, it definitely hits different. I can't imagine what it's like for these wives and girlfriends and moms and dads and brothers and sisters and close friends. My God, that's got to be intense. That's got to be an intense thing to go through. Can you imagine seeing like your dad in there? That's crazy. But yeah, so he but it sounds like, it's gone, and the prognosis or whatever is he's healing up about as good as you could possibly. Oh, and his left eye was freaking torn. Dustin's left eye was tore, but the part that tore was not any part that affects his vision. So I mean, this is crazy though, fractured his head in 2 places, tore his left eye, and his left side of his face is numb because he took 2 spinning back elbows. But he's tough. He knows what he signed up for. This is what he this is what he wanted to do, and he trained hard, and he stepped in the cage. I mean, far worse has happened. Far more will continue to happen. This is what these guys sign up for. It's the honor of the fight, and they're freaking fighters. So you don't need to feel sorry for him. He's going to be fine. But yeah, so it's cool to see him fight. It's great. Great event. Would love to go to pay-per-view sometime, but those tickets are a lot more expensive. BPC 157, if you have not known what the heck is up with these peptides like me, I finally tried BPC 157. I buy it in pill form, and the bottle lasts about a month, and it's $160 for a bottle, so it's not cheap. But I'm on my second bottle, so I'll be finishing my second month. I really do feel so. BPC 157, it's a peptide. You got to have a prescription if you want to get it injected in with a needle. But I'm not sure what the advantages are to injecting with the needle. I think you can inject it closer to the point of an injury, maybe get some additional healing benefits from that. But I thought to start, I would just take it as pill form. I have a bulge disc in my back. This thing has caused me problems for years. I had a little injury when I was 15 playing basketball, and then just did not know how to protect my body when I was doing manual labor, building sheds, carrying freaking 4 pieces of 4x8 7/16 inch plywood, 2 or 3 pieces of 5/8 inch flooring plywood at the same time, 2 shingle packs over your shoulder, going up a ladder, floor joist stacked up your arm, stacking the floor joist down on the floor, just freaking, not what I hard on the back. Yeah, but I didn't have back problems at the time, but man, the last 5-10 years has definitely a lot of problems. And the last injury was at the end of the year, and it usually takes 3, 4, 5 months to really heal up. Yeah, 3. So yeah, so I've had that kind of lingering, and it was definitely healing from the last injury, but I still had lingering pain. And so BPC 157 is good for healing. It's good for gut health. It's good for mental clarity. It's good for bones and joints, ligaments. It's good. It helps them heal and be healthier and be more vibrant and be stronger. The first couple nights, it definitely was having an effect. I was curious to see like what the longer term effect would be, but it was like noticeable, like something's different here. I could feel it in my body. I woke up laughing the first 2 nights I took it. Very weird. It's never happened before. Just in a dream, laughing out loud. You wake up and you're laughing out loud. The first night I took it, it felt like I was awake the whole night, but I know I was sleeping. The next day I wasn't tired at all. No yawning, not tired at all, but it felt like I was sleeping awake. It was weird, but that all was just the first 2, 3, 4 days of it. After that, no noticeable effects. Take the pill twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. No, I can't even tell anymore. But my body felt, oh man, about as good as it's felt in a long time at the end of that first month. No pain in my back, none whatsoever. Yeah, I'd get sore at the gym or whatever, but not bad, not bad. I felt like it made me stronger. I didn't notice a difference in cardio, but I do feel like it made my muscles a little stronger. So I recommend it if you're dealing with a systemic health issue. I don't know much about the gut health effects or any of that, but apparently it BPC 157 heals and strengthens, and it does that to your gut also apparently. So if you're on the on the fence with that, I recommend it. I think that's enough for now. That's a minute. That's a minute and 15, hour 15. I think we'll wrap with that. Hey, if you want, you could drop a comment on the YouTube video and let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about. We didn't get into any current events. We didn't get into Trump and Biden. We didn't get into all the wars. We didn't get into the moon landing. There's a lot we didn't get into. So maybe we'll talk about more of that stuff on another time. So if there's anything you want me to talk about, drop it in the comments. Bye, guys.